Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Casual Sports Podcast once again. I'm Alec Caberna. Those two are Matt Morrison and Mike Wolfgang. Got a full show going into it, guys. Had an exciting weekend, some fun football, and a lot of drama still. A lot of drama going on across sports, especially AFC North, man. It's going up and down and haywire.
Yeah,
I mean, 1 minute you got a team in first place, 2 weeks later they're sitting dead last in the division, and things are looking dire all of a sudden for some teams. Other teams, they're on their up and up, and somehow the Ravens are still in first place. So a lot of craziness going on there. But guys, how was your weekend? Been a while since we've seen one another.
It was a good weekend.
Yeah, it was all right. Tiring.
Yeah. Do anything fun?
So I watch
I
sports.
got up on my roof and cleaned the gutters out with a leaf blower.
Oh, fun, always fun.
You didn't hurt
Dangerous
yourself,
getting you
but
up
you're
on a
still
mat.
here.
No,
Getting you up on a
Huh?
roof, Matt's dangerous.
You're still here, Matt, in one piece. So
That's
it worked
somehow.
out.
why? You didn't see the cast on my leg yet. No. No.
Yeah, right.
I was with you today, so no.
Okay. Well, I'm working with a concussion on my end, so it was
Yeah,
definitely
how'd
a
that
fun
happen?
weekend. Playing basketball, took an elbow right to the center of the face, and haven't been the same since. So if I sound a little weird today, that's why. Slurring through things on a concussion. It took me an hour and a half putting together this week's show because of it.
Yeah,
But
playing somebody pretty competitive, huh?
oh yeah, they were unstoppable. I destroyed them, but they were physical down in the paint.
I'm sure.
There you go.
Yeah,
You held your ground.
Yeah, I held my ground, took a shot, but I still won, came out on top. Boys, how about the Cavs? They're looking great here. Mike, I know you've been pulling a few stats for us on the Cavs recently. What's that one big one you want to talk about?
Well, so I texted you guys last night before the game and said that it was a tweet, actually. I don't remember who it was from, but it was 10 games they played up until yesterday. They haven't been favored in a single game, and including last night's game, which made it 11 against the Knicks. They haven't been favored in 11 of their first games, and somehow they're 7-4. So we talked about it a couple times. I'll let you guys talk about it too, but you got to love the way they're playing.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure.
Absolutely.
And then you look at that game last night. I mean, Rubio was going insane off the bench. And, I mean, that's really been kind of the storyline all season, right? Is Rubio going crazy. He's been fantastic. He had a 37-point double-double in this one. And then, Evan Mobley had probably one of his best performances as, this rookie season. 26 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. And I think the biggest takeaway is you're finding Sexton and Garland able to move the ball, even playing, less minutes. Sexton only played 13 in this game. He got 8 points, 4 assists in those 13 minutes. If he plays a full game, I mean, he could be looking at 10, 12 assists for one of the first times in his career. So I think there's a lot of upsides coming from Sexton. And obviously Garland played 35, got 16 points, 5 assists as the main point guard. I want to see him moving the ball around, especially with the way Rubio was balling in this game. I want to see a lot more out of this team because we know they can get a lot more. So things to work on, things to improve on. But, overall, this was a great weekend, and obviously they got the big win over Toronto just a few nights ago. It's been fun to watch so far, and, us talking about it here on the show, it's just getting more fans involved that maybe haven't been watching it. I know I was talking to my dad this weekend, and he was just like, yeah, if it wasn't for you guys, I don't think I would have known the Cavs were even playing yet. I figured they were having another down season like the last, 4 or 5 years, and instead here we are, sitting 7-4 in 6th place of the Eastern Conference, so things are looking up right now for Cleveland. I just want to see him continue the streak here.
And I definitely want to see him continue it, but we were with each other Friday night, and I was talking to Matt. Like, they were down 15 against the Raptors. Like, last year, they probably don't come back and win that game.
Come back and won
It's
by
probably
one.
9 times out of 10 last year they don't win that game. And last night it was back and forth, same type of game as the Raptors, and they pull away pretty earlier than they did against the Raptors last night. But I like Garland able to close out last night. I like 37 off the bench from Rubio. You can't get any better. You don't even get that from starters half the time. And between Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley, you can argue Evan Mobley is the best player in this draft so far, and he's definitely made his biggest impact with the Cavs, and it's showing off with a 7-4 record.
It sure is. I like that whole starting lineup they have. I think that the only one that I'm kind of concerned about, Dean Wade at the power forward position. I mean, he's not getting too many points per game. I don't even think he's getting up to 10 points.
No, he got 6 points in that
just
game, 0 assists, 3 rebounds, and 27 minutes played. That right now, I think is just the system fit. When you see Rubio go off in that game last night, I mean, it was all Rubio. It was pretty much all guards. And then Evan Mobley's really your starting forward. Dean Wade was filling in for the loss of Markkanen and the loss of Love. So we're getting those injuries back up. I want to see this year when we get these injuries going. We got piled up on injuries last year when they were looking good. I want to see them continue to fight through it like they did in this game. When you get big players go down, big names, get your big bench guys coming off, I want to see this team continue to fight down like a real contender.
And
I want them to look like they
yeah.
can be, a playoff team. Playoff teams, you win when your best players are out. I want to see if the Cavs can do that.
And what I like about them is like they're starting this huge lineup, and I had questions about it the first game and the first couple of games of the season. But it's like if you have Markman on the wing guarding, a guard or a forward, and he gets beat, you have two 7-footers behind you that challenge shots, and it's hard to score against his team at the rim. And I think that's what they're doing best so far. I mean, their offense can still get better, and their defense can still improve as well. But their interior defense is so far one of the best in the league that I've seen.
And Alec, you just said they have to battle injuries. Well, speak of an injury, Colin Sexton has just suffered a torn meniscus in his left knee. No immediate timetable on a return, more testing to come, but expect Sexton to have an extended absence.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, you saw it that game. That's why he played those 13 minutes. He was having a good game, and then, he gets injured in that game. I didn't see the injury. I assumed seeing just 13 minutes, that was probably the case. But, this is the big spot early in the season. They've had a tough road. We've been talking about these first 20 games, and the road doesn't end here. They have the Wizards later this week that has turned out to be, similar to the Cavs, and they're having a great start to the season. They're on a similar trajectory that, you want to see them continue to fight through. And then they'll get the Pistons, who, despite the fact they're continuing to have down seasons, they got a lot of young guys that are very talented and will bring the fight. It's not going to be an easy game. Then they have back-to-back against the Celtics. 2 of the 3 after that are against the Nets. They have the Warriors. They have the Suns. So a lot of big names coming up, and without Sexton in there, torn meniscus, that could be his season. So this team is going to be without their starting shooting guard the entire year most likely. And you saw even a team as great as Golden State, they lost Klay Thompson for 2 years. Those 2 years, even, though they missed Curry for one of those 2, they were down the entire time, and that's one of the great contenders. I want to see if the Cavs can continue to fight through an injury to Sexton, much like, you see the Nets playing through without their big guy. You see the Lakers play without LeBron and AD all the time. You see Dallas play without Porzingis. You get Atlanta without Trae Young some nights. Jimmy Butler was out part of last season. A lot of these big game teams, it's not clean all the way through. You have to rely on the rest of your team, and that's when you build up a team that has the depth like Cleveland has this season.
Yeah, and this is the first time that Colin's actually going to miss, a good amount of time in a row. Since he's been drafted here, he's been their solid guy that's never missed, time. So that's going to hurt. But the luxury you have, and this is why I'd like to pick up a Ricky Rubio. Last year, this would have been bad for them because they didn't have any backup point guard last year. So it's gonna take a shot at their bench scoring. Somebody's gonna have to step up there. And
Dylan Windler, he's coming up. Danny Valentine, once they get him some more time, he could be a big part. He was quiet on the Chicago Bulls, but he played there for a while. He's got a lot of NBA experience, much like Rubio.
Yeah, and Denzel Valentine was a sensation at Michigan State in college. So he's got experience. He knows how to play. He got in for a little bit last night, just some garbage time. But, I like what he can bring. And, of course, Lamar Stevens, too. We've seen what he can do, even
last season,
going back to last year. Yeah, so we're all right. We'll be okay.
It's going to hurt, but it's going to have to be, committee by effort. Because,
now
they're not going to have the luxury of not having a backup point guard. It's just going to have to be somebody coming off the bench scoring. And that's why it's important to get Love back, and it's important to get Okoro back off the bench. And that's why it's good that we're getting what we're getting out of Jetty Osman so far, because the last couple of games he's been shooting the lights out of the ball. So I know he's kind of streaky, but if he can continue that, which they're going to need it, that's going to make up for some of the loss of Sexton scoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure, and we'll move on here. Staying in basketball, one of the other big teams this season, kind of on the up and up, and we kind of expected him to have a good start here, and especially with the amount of guys they picked up in the offseason, they've skipped they haven't skipped a beat getting right into the season, getting this flow together. Chicago Bulls, they sit 6-3 right now, and tonight they take on the Brooklyn Nets, 7-3 with out their big guy in Kyrie Irving. So this is two teams right now that look like they could be there at the end of the season. So this one probably a fun early season matchup. What are your guys' thoughts going into tonight here? Nets versus Bulls.
Man, I know you like
in
this
Chicago.
Bulls team, so go ahead.
What's up?
I know you like this Bulls team, so.
Yeah, the Bulls team you're talking about, the pickups. I like what Vucevic is doing, and the other ball, Lonzo Ball. Everybody keeps talking about LaMelo Ball too much. I'm like, hey, let's just not forget about his brother here. He's He's doing okay. I think this is his best outing so far. I mean, nobody really recognizes the Lakers' tenure too much, and I mean, he started coming around in New Orleans, and now I think this is where he finally breaks through here with the the Chicago Bulls, and he has good guys around him. Like I mentioned, Vucevic, and you have veteran DeMar DeRozan as well. So I think I think they can make a run here. I mean, the Cavs sit right behind them. I mean, definitely the Cavs and Bulls are surprising people this year, but
And the Wizards
I mean,
too.
I think the Wizards too. Yeah, yeah, but I think without Kyrie, it's not really a big loss. I mean, you still have Kevin Durant. I mean, that's just saying much right there. You have Kevin Durant, who's one of the best in the game.
And put up
So
31 points in the last game. James
yeah,
Harden at 28, and then you looked at the rest of the team against the Raptors just last night. I mean, Bruce Brown Jr. 12 points, Blake Griffin 14, Joe Harris 11, Patty Mills 13, and even DeAndre Bembry and LaMarcus Aldridge combined for 7 in that game. I mean, they're getting a full committee going right now. So without Kyrie Irving, they're still fine. I'm interested to see if they get Kyrie Irving back some point this season. And New York right now looking into changing their COVID protocols. Kind of seems, for the Nets maybe a little bit, but they're saying for the entire city. So he could be back sooner rather than later without any other commotion, unless the NBA decides to put restrictions on him. Because once again, NBA is their own business. If they decide their players have to be vaccinated, it's much like you go working at a regular company. If they don't do it, they can fire you, they can hold you out until it. So Kyrie Irving, while the path looks a little bit easier now, the NBA could place its own restrictions on teams, and it could end up hurting. I mean, you saw the NFL do something very similar, and players are getting punished big, and Aaron Rodgers now faces potential suspension too. So I mean, right now this Nets squad, they're rolling right along, but I'm interested to see if Kyrie Irving returns here, what that impacts this team in terms of how much they're getting production off the bench.
Yeah, and how does that affect the
yeah,
way they play, like you're saying? Because last year that was our biggest. They didn't have time playing. This big three didn't have time playing against with each other last year because they got hit by injuries for most of their key guys, and so far it seems like through these first couple 10, 11, 12 games, whatever they played so far, that they've at least found some way to we don't know when Kyrie's coming back, we don't know if he's coming back, we don't know if he's going to get traded because you've seen possible destinations float around on social media, like hey, he can go here, but it seems like right now they have somewhat of an idea of what they want to do without him. So I'm just curious to see, like you said, Alec, if he comes back, what that does to the team with their bench scoring, with their starting lineup. So that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely,
yeah,
and I think one of the especially biggest things you have to look at with this net squad is their defensive rating. This is one of the best defensive teams early here in the NBA season. I mean, you look at their opponents so far, no one's really scoring over 110 in today's NBA. That's impressive, especially when you're holding quite a few teams right there in the low 100s, 102, 103, down there in that part of the scoring category. It's a big thing for your defense, and it's kind of what we're seeing with the Cavs. Defense is winning games right now because of the fact they brought in, some big guys, and that's kind of what the Nets did as well. I mean, when you get Durant, who not always great on defense, but you can count on him every now and then, and that's same with James Harden. When the going gets tough, James Harden will be able to give you some good defensive play, but they also have Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, two guys down there in the paint that have been paint monsters for like their entire career. So this team has gotten better defensively in the past year, and I'm also interested to see how Kyrie Irving impacts this defense. But I think the one thing so far is that defense has been great without him, so has the offense. I want to see what changes here, but let's go ahead and look into tonight's game against the Bulls. These two teams coming in, both smoking hot. Obviously, the win last night for the Nets. They're now winners of 5 straight going back to October 29th. So they're on a hot streak of their own. And then Chicago Bulls, they do come off a loss to the 76ers in back-to-back games this past weekend. They did beat the Celtics before it, and this is an offense that has been going along. They had a down weekend, but we haven't seen tons of scoring, but we've seen some pretty good defense from the Bulls, especially here. And I think you look at tonight's game, I think I still give the favor to the Nets, but I think it's close.
Yeah, I got to give it to, I got to still go Nets here as much as, I like this uprising Chicago team, but, I think taking back-to-back losses, 76ers both times, I think they have some figuring out to do, and the Nets aren't really the team to figure things out against.
Right.
You have to play like a Detroit or something to figure more things out. You want Zach LaVine in a bigger role. DeMar DeRozan. Those are your top leading scorers from the last game. LaVine with 32 points, and then, DeRozan with 25 points. And what do you want to do with Caruso coming off the bench, and even Derek Jones Jr.? What do you want those guys to do? I think they have a little figuring out to do. So
You're going Nets
Yeah,
here. What
you're
about
going
you,
Nets.
Mike?
Yeah.
Taking Bulls or Nets tonight?
I'm actually gonna go Bulls at home tonight.
Okay.
This game's like you said, both of you guys said it's going to be close. I think the spread's like 1.5, so it's going to be. They're predicting it to be a tight game. I just like what the Bulls are doing right now. I also like what the Nets are doing right now, but I often, I like picking home teams sometimes, and I like what the Bulls are, like you said, Matt. You ran through the guys on their bench. I think they're pretty strong on their bench, and I think with the guys they brought in so far, they're starting to, at least the early part of the season so far, get something going. So I think they're going to feed off what they have at home, and bench guys often play better at home. So I'm going to go with the Bulls.
Well, Mike, to your point though, Bulls coming into this past week, and they had just one loss on the season. Now they stand with two. I mean, with 3 after 2 back-to-backs over the weekend. And you look at their home and away splits: 3-2 at home, 3-1 on the road. So it's still early, so it's kind of hard to look at those and really tell what a team is. This is a big win tonight if they can get it at home.
Yeah.
But next one up here, folks, we had the NASCAR Championship crown this weekend. Matt, you should have gone with your original pick, man. Kyle Larson. Yeah, you joined on the Chase Elliott wagon with me this past weekend making the picks, but you should have stuck with your original guy, Kyle Larson. He's now won 4 of the last 5 races in NASCAR season, including the championship one. So he was dominant in this, late stages, and he's been a phenomenal race car driver. I don't like, kind of similar to what you said about Big Ben, don't like his off the field stuff, don't like, Kyle Larson off the track, but on the track, it's hard to deny he's one of the best out there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, he finished the season with 10 wins, including that one last night. And like I said last show, I've seen this guy put in any racing automobile possible, and he has won. Okay? He has won in, anything you can imagine. Dirt car racing, go-kart racing. They're talking about that. He used to win in that. He's just – I've seen some things from him that, this guy is going to be the future of NASCAR. One of the big stars. I was kind of upset, near the end of that race, Martin Truex Jr. was making a run at him, and if he would have won, he would have ended up taking the championship. And he's getting a little older. Guys like Ryan Blaney and Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson are going to have their chances, later down the years. It's kind of sad to see those older guys not maybe pull it out. And Martin Truex has never had a championship. So, that was a little bit of a down note, but, you got to love these young new stars. And, next year is going to be even a big year because they're getting the next new car. Well, I think it's called the Next Gen car, so they're getting a brand new
Truex won the
car.
championship in 2017, dude.
Did he? Okay,
yeah.
Well, how many
that was a great season. That was the year, I think his wife was diagnosed with cancer. That's the year she beat it.
That's right.
And then he won the entire thing.
I forgot about it. That's right. I forgot about that one. But, I like to see the guys like that get more shots at that because, they're getting a little later in their careers. So
yeah, I didn't get a chance to see the race. I just saw the outcome, and congrats to Kyle Larson. I don't like what happened off it, but, at the end of the day, I do like Hendrick Motorsports. I've been a big fan of Hendrick, pretty much my entire life. I was born a Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan, and because of that, I always liked Jeff Gordon, Gosh, who else was on that besides Jimmy Johnson? Casey Kane, driving the number 9 car back in the day, and I've always liked this Hendrick Motorsports crew. They had a dominant season, and they'll come out with a championship here. And obviously, Kyle Larson was a great pickup for Hendrick Motorsports, and I guess we'll just see how it continues to build. They got a young crew, and Bowman and Elliott are obviously great young race car drivers, and so is obviously Kyle Larson. They got a great group going, and lots of positive things coming out of it here. Mike, any thoughts on this NASCAR championship this past weekend?
I'm like you, Alec. I just saw the result. Like you guys was texting the group chat. I saw the result, and I saw it on social media. So I don't really have analysts like Matt does, but yeah, congrats.
Yeah, Hendrick Motorsports. This guy they showed him yesterday. Everybody coming up, hug him. Jeff Gordon getting in on the celebration as well because that was his boss for pretty much his whole career.
William Byron as well. He's a great
Hendrick
driver.
Motorsports. They've been a part of NASCAR the past 40 years. Going back with Dale Earnhardt Sr. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a premier race car series. So, You look at it, you move on, continue NASCAR. You now look ahead next season. We'll get some new cars in there. Should be an exciting jolt of energy for the NASCAR world. So I will just have to wait and see. But Matt, we had another big event this past weekend. Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant took 11 rounds of technical knockout as Alvarez becomes the undisputed champion for the boxing world. You guys picked it right. I took Plant, the underdog, in that one. Didn't come out, but it was a tough fight the all the way down. And I loved one line that came out of Plant in that fight. I believe it was in the 9th round. He was just like, "Hey, I'm pretty good for 21-0, aren't I?" He said as they were squaring up in the circle. So I thought it was a pretty fun match, fun moment. But congrats to Alvarez in that one. Took it. He continues to dominate, Matt. We talked about it last week with, his only losses coming to the great Floyd Mayweather. So he continues on his dominant streak. Another prominent name here in the boxing world.
Yeah, absolutely. Canelo Alvarez. I didn't get to see any highlights of that fight yet, but I mean, this shows how dominant he is. He's one of the best. Like what you were just saying there. And Plant is up on the uprising, but you're just not going to beat one of the old dogs, man. Just not going to beat him.
Well, Matt, I will give you this stat. I will give you this stat that came out of the fight. Alvarez, at 31 years old, became the first boxer to unify all 4 recognized titles at 168 pounds. He also became the first Mexican fighter to become an undisputed champion. So, 2 knockdowns in the 11th round. They stopped the fight. Plant, gets taken down for his first loss ever. And, we could look back at this in a couple of years and see Plant in the same situation Alvarez was. He lost to an all-time great a couple of years back, and he continues to win ever since then. And you could see just continue passing of the torch here. You saw it from Mayweather to Alvarez, so potentially Alvarez hands it back to Plant in, a couple years from now. They sit about the same age, though, so you never know if he's going to be the next guy that steps up here in the boxing world, but, it's fun to think about at least.
Oh, absolutely.
And before we move off boxing, before we move off boxing here, I got to throw out one thing. This was a challenge issue to Floyd Money Mayweather by Valley Christian's head coach Andy Hake. He wants a fight. Oh, Matt, we've been saying it on football broadcasts, on the podcast here. And, Andy Hake's like, "Oh, you guys got to get this promoted out there for me," and we're gonna keep pushing it out. Mayweather versus Andy Hake. We want it here. He's challenged it, so challenge. The fight has been issued. We'll see if Mayweather has the cojones to go up against Valley Christian's Andy Hake.
Let's get it.
Yeah, right?
Get it going.
Yeah, man, that's a huge fight here in the Valley.
No, I'm clipping this and posting it later.
I got to make sure we get this one out here, boys. But let's move into some NHL. We got one game here to preview for tonight. The LA Kings 5-5-1 on the season. They head out of the country to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are 7-4-1, and I think you look at these two teams, they're kind of in a similar spot, despite the fact Kings, only 5 wins, Toronto 7, but pretty close. And out of tonight's games, I like this one the best. What are your thoughts going into this one here for this game tonight?
Mike, go ahead first.
Like you said, Alec, I think it's a pretty even matchup. It's tough for the Kings traveling out of the country as it is for any team, and especially the way the Maple Leafs have been playing so far, they're with the 7 wins and 4 losses.
Second place in the Atlantic Division as well.
Yeah, I was going to go there too. I've been keeping an eye on them a little bit in terms of standings, so they've been up towards the standings. And, it's going to be a close game. Matt, you got anything on this one?
Yeah, it could go either way. Toronto definitely, doing good on the season, 7-4. LA's, they're 505-5. It could go either way here, Like I say about hockey every week, any team can win. Any team can win. So
yeah,
we'll just have to wait and see. It should be a good matchup. I like a couple of players on both teams. Tavares for Toronto is a pretty good player. 6 goals already this season, 6 assists. So happy to see more play from him. Yeah,
and they got a defenseman out too, TJ Brody out for Toronto tonight. So that's that's a big loss in their defense category, but. Then the Kings, they have a couple injuries as well. But, Alec, you got anything on this one too?
No, not really. As I said, I don't follow this too much, but I think the one thing you look at right now is the scoring differential for the Maple Leafs. 32 goals for, 32 against. They haven't separated that one part. They're winning games close, and obviously you're seeing the same thing out of the Kings here. 30 goals for, 31 against, so they're at a differential of -1. Last, they're on a win streak. They're 4 strong right now. So Kings come into this looking good, but so do the Maple Leafs. They're on a 5-game win streak. They're actually the 2 longest win streaks going on in hockey right now. So you kind of look at this game. Both teams are hot. One team's got to lose, unfortunately, here. And I got to say, it's going to be the Kings. These teams seem so even, but you've just seen Toronto put teams away a little bit earlier, and they have the 1 overtime loss, but they've been, I think, a little bit better so far in the season. So I'm going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Maple Leafs as well. But because looking at the stats here between the two teams, Matt Kopitar for the Kings,
Kopitar is good too,
but he leads them in everything. He leads them in points, goals, and assists. Yeah. And it's not the case with the Maple Leafs.
Him up?
Yeah, they have a different guy in every 3 of those departments for the Maple Leafs. They're a lot more balanced, at least so far, than the Kings are. Like you said, Tavares, he leads them in goals, and Marner leads them in points and assists. So they have somewhat more of a balance on their team than the Kings do. So I'm with Alec. I'm going with the Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I gotta go with the Maple Leafs as well. But like I just said it like a couple seconds ago, anything can happen. Any team can win because the other night the Chicago Blackhawks, they're like 1-8. They defeated the Predators, who are not too bad. They were 6-4 at the time, but the Blackhawks are like 1-8. Now they're 2-9. So anybody can win. You just gotta get that right edge going into the game, and it's your game. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. And we're going to move on here. NFL stuff. We're going to take NFL rest of the show here. So, Matt, how about we talk about these teams here playing tonight, Monday Night Football, Chicago Bears, Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 teams that have been living in the past for the last decade here. They're both trying to find their way back up. Steelers are having a pretty good season. They're kind of like, it feels like a roller coaster once again for them. They got off such a great start last year. They fell down, collapsed come playoff time. This season, they looked like they were going to start bad again. Now they're coming back up. They get the win over the Browns, win over a bad Seahawks, win over a bad Broncos team, or a weird Broncos team, I should say, not necessarily a bad one.
Weird. They're weird.
I think a weird one, but they lost those first few games, and even that Bills one, you had a lot of question marks coming out of it, despite the fact the defense helped them to win in that second half. Right now, this Steelers squad, they win, they're in second place. They lose, they're in last place of the AFC North. So AFC North still, in complete haywire. So loss doesn't knock them out, but it definitely provides more question marks than answers for this Steelers team. On the Bears side, they're working with a young quarterback. They're 3-5, and I think Justin Fields had his best game coming out of last week, 19-27, 175 yards through the air, a touchdown and an interception, but also 103 yards on the ground with the touchdown there. I think he's coming off one of his best games, but now he's going up against perhaps the best defensive rushing unit in the country with Watt and Hayward and the rest of your fantastic linebackers and defensive core. I mean, they bring heat to the quarterback, and Justin Fields is probably going to get demolished in the backfield. I'm expecting 2 interceptions out of him. As much as I want to see Justin Fields have a big game, I think the one side you may look at as a sign of hope is Steelers have been known to play down to their competition, and if they do that here tonight, I think it's the only chance the Bears have of winning. I think it's a possibility. You never want to count a team out because this is the NFL, but you just see the defense right now for the Steelers. They're just too hot, and if the offense was playing half as good as as their defense, this team could potentially be undefeated. The offense is still playing catch-up, though, and obviously you're seeing Deontay Johnson starting to turn into something. He's having a great second half of this season so far. He's been really unstoppable these last few games, and Chase Claypool was phenomenal against the Browns, and Najee Harris seems to be coming into his own. So it's coming together.
Absolutely.
But we're entering the second half of the season. This is your 8th game. You already had one of your byes, so it becomes kind of all out from Steelers now. You had those first few weeks to put things together. You had your bye week. I want to see what they come out now tonight. I want to see them come out big, and I want to see them come out like the team that they probably should be, but we haven't seen in a while.
Matt, I'll let you go first. You're your team.
Yeah, absolutely. You basically said it. They're coming together more. This is the game where they really have to come out and say, hey, we're not going to play down to our opponent. We're going to come out and we're going to show that, hey, we're one of the best teams in the AFC North. So we have to show that. I like what they're doing with Najee Harris. 26 carries last game, almost 100 yards, 91 yards. Ben's not throwing it 50 times. He threw it 34 times, and that's good. And, like you said, Chase Claypool is turning into a beast, and Deontay Johnson physically, cementing himself as the number 1 receiver. And I mean, look at the last time that he was limited when they had Juju. They've lost. They have won every game since Juju has been out. So that has to say something. Everybody's talking about, obviously the whole Cleveland Browns Odell thing. Let's talk about the whole Pittsburgh and, Juju deal.
And Matt, I've been saying this for a while about Juju, that he doesn't seem to be the guy, and you're seeing it now that he's out. The team continues to move along in a better direction. Obviously, this offense, though, as I was pointing out, it's been pretty abysmal, and that's a word we love to use here, but it describes this offense perfectly. They're tied for 4th worst in the NFL in points for in games, so they can't score. They're on the same level as a lot of really bad teams, and you look at that and you go, how is this even possible? I mean, they have the same amount of points scored as the Jaguars, who scored 9 points in a victory, their first victory in the United States in 420 days. They have the same amount of points for. So if it wasn't for the fact this defense has been holding people to 142 points total on the season, which is, I believe, second best right now in the NFL behind just the Bills. So if it wasn't for this defense, this is the team we're looking at in the same regards as we're probably looking at a team like the Dolphins.
Yeah. You make it. I mean, it's a good point.
I mean, you look at the Dolphins. The reason why I say them, their defense has allowed 100 more points than you. 242. You guys have 142. But their offense has scored 155 compared to your 132. So they've scored more, despite the fact that they have looked they've looked way more awful than the Steelers. But it's because of the Steelers defense that they're able to win football games. And the one thing I'm worried about is the same problem we keep seeing in Chicago, and the problem is they've had this last pretty much decade. The defense has been phenomenal, and I think you saw this last year from the Steelers. But with the offense struggling to find their identity, you don't see them put together long streaks of winning like they should be, or being able to close out big games, or come playoff time, win. I mean, you saw it last year. That was their problem. The offense didn't have an identity going into the playoffs. They tried to find an identity bringing in Najee Harris, and we'll see if that changes things up. And right now, the AFC North has a chance to get 3 teams into the playoffs if they continue at this rate. So I think that's the one side, positive side. AFC North has time, and that's what a lot of other divisions don't seem to have right now, is time. Everyone else has seemingly one group or 2 teams pulling away from the field. AFC North hasn't had that yet, and I'm expecting these last 9 is going to be an absolute sprint to the finish, with everyone pretty much having the same record going into this second half of the season.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that this Steelers offense is doing is limiting James Washington. I think Washington is a hidden gem, okay? And they don't throw it to him. He had 1 reception for 4 yards against the Browns. They need to go to him more, especially when they don't have Juju. They can create more, options for him. I mean, they're getting Zach Gentry and Pat
I was surprised they didn't target him as well, within most of the Browns secondary being down. I mean, everyone was pretty much focused on Claypool and Johnson. He was open a lot of times, just Browns didn't have the personnel out there to be able to counteract it, and that's kind of what cost their defense in the end. It's like the Browns only allowed 15 points in that game, but they just didn't have anybody come the second, stretch of that on defense to continue holding it down. Steelers get a final crucial touchdown, and that's kind of what we're talking about with the Steelers offense as well, is they seem limited. They don't seem to be the championship level offense that you guys had when you won the Super Bowl over a decade ago.
Yeah, I definitely think they should go with Washington. He has a chance to be like Rondale Moore, like the way Rondale Moore is with the Cardinals. They're stacked at receivers, but they still find ways to get him involved.
Right.
And Pittsburgh's not stacked at wide receivers, and he is limited. They need to go to him more, and they do.
Right, and I mean, I don't know what James Washington's contract is, but if he becomes a free agent, here in this offseason, I think he could potentially be a big steal for somebody if the Steelers don't get him back. I don't know what his contract is or if he's coming up on one, but there's quite a few teams out there, Lions, Indianapolis, that could use a wide receiver like him, kind of sneaky, that are quiet. Jets, a big one here in the free agent signing world. Deshaun Jackson signed to the Raiders this week as well. So let's talk here. Let's figure this game here tonight, though. Bears, their defense, it's been okay. I mean, it's been kind of what we expect out of them. they've only allowed 195 points on the season, so they're okay, but it's still on the higher end of the NFL. Their offense is in the same realm of scoring as the Steelers. They're actually a little bit worse. They scored 123. They're one of the worst offenses in the league right now, but they've been dealing with their own injuries as well. But I don't see anything out of the offense that's going to be able to get past the Steelers defense tonight. The defense could potentially give them a chance with the way the Steelers offense is just as struggling as much to find themselves. And if the Steelers find themselves here, like kind of what we saw in the second half against the Bills to start the season, and kind of what we saw against the Broncos and the Seahawks down at the very end of the game, pulling things out, come down that final few minutes, then I think we get the Steelers pulling away big if they can find themselves early. But I got a very strong feeling this game comes down to the wire and makes a lot of Steelers fans upset with some performances tonight.
Yeah, man, I think this one's gonna be close too. I mean, like I told you, what's the Steelers' biggest issue? I don't really think tonight would be considered a game they would play down to their opponents, because I think these teams are kind of on the same level, even though the records are slightly different. But what's the Steelers' biggest issue sometimes? When they're slightly favored at home and when they're playing in primetime matchups, and that's what tonight is on a Monday night game. But I lean towards either offense really does anything for me, but both defenses are really strong on both of these teams, and I got to give the edge to the Steelers, but I think their defense is a little bit better, and I think their offense is slightly better too, because they have their offensive line. Matt, I killed it when they drafted Najee and said, hey, Najee's a good draft, but like their offensive line still stinks. But the last couple weeks they've started to play better, and they started to play better together and creating holes for Najee, and that's why I think Najee is looking better, and like Alec was talking about, he's looking like what we thought he was going to be when they drafted him. So I think the Steelers are going to find a way to make a few more plays on offense tonight, and so I'm going with Pittsburgh at home.
And they basically they didn't draft a lot of offensive line. I mean, they got some good big guys. Dan Moore, I remember they drafted him. But Pat Freiermuth is a blocking tight end, and that's what they only threw to him 4 times last year.
That's why they drafted him.
Yeah, they drafted him to block for the running backs. He did it, in college. So, and then when you're in the red zone, he's a big red zone target. That's, he'll block your way down the field, and then in the red zone, he's a big target. I was watching clips the other day from him. This guy can catch in the red zone. So
you saw it in the Browns
game.
It
works.
I mean, I think yeah, definitely. So, guys, you want to make picks here for tonight?
Pittsburgh
should be pretty easy across the board here. Yeah, we're all gonna go with the Steelers then, I assume.
Now, I like the Cavs in Ohio, but that's the only Ohio team I like. So I'm more of a PA guy. So I got to go with the Steelers. They're my second favorite.
Well, the one thing I want to see out of the Steelers this season is they have such great regular seasons, right? But
they do.
You always see come postseason they collapse. They need to start putting together a team through the regular season that's built to last, because we haven't seen that. You go last time this team won the AFC Championship, 2010. It's been forever and a day since this team made it up there, and then they lose to the Packers in that Super Bowl, and they win it in 2008 and 2005, but it's been a while since they've seen that level of Big Ben, since they've had that level of wide receivers, since they've had those defensive players. Yeah. They have the defense that could win a title, and we saw it last season. The reason they got stopped as early as they did against the Browns in that first round in a 48-37 game was because their offense couldn't do a thing. They didn't have an identity. They made Roethlisberger throw way too many times. I want to see them put together a team that can finish the season. And Matt, I always talk about this when we're calling games, finishing your drives. We compared it to, getting everything on your plate at Thanksgiving dinner and you get full before you hit dessert. You got to finish if you want that dessert. And right now the dessert in the NFL is that Super Bowl. So I want to see them get to dessert. They don't have to finish dessert, but I want to see them get there before Ben's career is over and done with. Or else the second half of his career is just that. It's just the second half where he did nothing. Well, what's Big Ben without those first, few years? I want to see what he can finish his career with, much like you see Tom Brady doing, right? First half of his career, it's defined by the Patriots and Bill Belichick, and he leaves there, goes out there and tries to finish his career on the highest note possible here with Tampa Bay, and he's done that. He's dominated, and they win their Super Bowl. I want to see Big Ben do that. And obviously, he's not going to be Tom Brady. And this is what I think all the Steelers fans have been waiting for as well. This last decade, every season, it's hype, hype, hype. We win the AFC North. We're 12-4. Tomlin hasn't had a losing season in 21 years with us. He doesn't lose. It doesn't matter, does it? I mean, all this is
They don't win
just
a Super
fluff.
Bowl.
It's all fluff, and at the end of the day, the main goal is Super Bowl. So, with this team, yes, has been great, and they're a contender, maybe. I don't know if you can even say that they are a contender because they never finish.
They might never be a contender, but they're always in it. They're always
they're always in it, and they're always the contender for the AFC North, and they're always a contender to, knock someone off and cause someone else chaos, but it doesn't feel like this is ever a team that's contending to win a championship.
I feel the same. I mean,
Matt, they were. It goes to Alex's point though, like that with when they had Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, like they were contending, but like Alex saying, they slip up against the Jags in the playoffs. They slip up against somebody else. I think it might have been Cincinnati one year when they was still good under Andy Dalton. Well, nobody was beating Patriots though. So
right.
That's the last time we were in the AFC Championship. 4 years ago we lost to the Patriots.
There's an opening in the AFC, you feel, right now. With Tom Brady being gone, Bills look like they want to take it and be that team. And I think it's up to the rest of the AFC to stop the East from continuing to dominate everybody. And the team you expect to look for is the one full of veterans and with a great head coach. And you look around the AFC and you go, man, who is that team? Who's got the best head coach? Who's got a Hall of Fame quarterback? Who's got a #1 ranked defense? The Steelers. That's everything. That's their calling card, is they should be that team, but they're just not. And they haven't been in a while, and that's kind of what we're looking for, is the Steelers to be what everyone expects them to be.
And I think they're going to be that tonight, Matt. I expect them to be that tonight.
That's what we expect. This is a game we shouldn't really even be having any second thoughts about against the Bears.
I honestly don't have any second thoughts, but it's just the Steelers.
The fact that you can look at the Bears and say they have a chance is what I'm saying. Because you know what? If this was the Chiefs, the Packers, the Cardinals, Chiefs on any other season, Tampa Bay, we come into this game and we go, oh, well, that's enough. This is easy. This should be a guaranteed win for them. We just don't see that with the Steelers. Every week seems like, oh man, I don't know. This could be a heart attack on a grill, and it takes you back, and you go, why is this team continuing to struggle like they do when they should be a top team? So, I mean, we'll move on here. Biggest surprise so far in the young NFL season for you guys. What are you guys feeling here? We're about the mid-season. What's your biggest surprise?
Matt, you got one?
My biggest surprise, that the Jaguars managed to win 2 games.
Yeah, I was going to go that way.
Especially against the Bills. Man, they didn't even look like the Bills of old yesterday. Right,
they win 6-9 after 420 days winless in the United States. Was this the meme team? But man, I was kind of going to go a similar route with that. The fact that you look at the Jaguars and they're not the worst team in the NFL, and once again, it's still the Lions.
You know what? I guess I'll go. Lions. I'm not surprised the way the Cardinals are playing, because last year I looked at them as a team that could have been like San Francisco from the year before. Maybe not get to the Super Bowl last year, but make it, show improvements, like good, many improvements, and be a team that could try to get in the playoffs. And they were close last year, and obviously this year they're 8-1 right now, and it looks like they're pretty much going to be a playoff team. So I'm not really going to go the Cardinals. I'm kind of going to go. I'm not really. I guess I'll go Chiefs, because the last few years they were able to escape bad defenses, and I tried to tell you guys their defense was bad week 1. You guys didn't want to hear it, but they escaped it the last few years, and they
knew their defense was bad.
I said it was bad week 1 against the Browns, and Alex thought it was decent, but it was never good.
Oh, man. And what's his name? Shouldn't even be in the league.
The last few years.
What's his name? Shouldn't even be in the league. What's his name? Not Matthew, the other guy.
Nicole Hartman?
No, the defensive player.
Oh,
he was getting yelled at by Matthew. I don't know.
Oh, well, I don't know. But Swanson, I mean, the last few years they were able to escape bad defenses and go to 2 Super Bowls and win 1. But it's like this year they can't find a way to escape it, and their defense is really the same it has been, and just it's starting to bite them. Bite them a little bit. So I guess I'll go Chiefs the way they're playing. But they got 2 wins. They're on two game winning streak, and they still have a tough schedule coming up. But I guess I'll go Chiefs.
I think I have 2 surprises so far. One is the elevation of Mac Jones. The way he's been playing so far in the season, he's looked great. Yeah. And he has his team in second place of the AFC East behind a dominant Bills squad. But you look at him, they're 1 game behind Buffalo. Buffalo's 5-3. New England's 5-4, and the one thing you can look at with it, New England is undefeated on the road. They are 4-0 on the road, but 1-4 in Foxborough. So this is a team that's had tough home games, but somehow Mac Jones is performing on the road. And that's the one thing I've kind of been surprised with, because normally you see rookie quarterbacks, they're fine in their home stadium, but it's when they hit the road, they struggle, they're kind of in and out, they show no consistency, and we're not getting that this year out of Mac Jones. He's having a great first year, and I'm really loving it. My second surprise, though, is the fact that the AFC North is exactly what everybody thought it was going to be. I mean, you talk about this all the time with like certain divisions, and you know, you expect, oh man, this looks like it could be a really competitive year. Everyone should be, you know, even. And then you see the season, and there's one team that just jumps out, and they're so far and ahead away from everybody. You have to scratch your head and go, well, we were completely wrong on that. I mean, I think you kind of look at the NFC West in the same light this year. But Seattle should be good, San Fran should be good, Rams should be good, Cardinals should be good. Right now, it's just the Rams and Cardinals. Obviously, Seahawks dealing with their own injuries, but you haven't seen anything out of the 49ers, who once again dealing with an injury. But AFC North is, I think, the one that surprises you, because you see all the injuries to the Ravens at the beginning of the year. The Steelers could be a great team, or they could not be a great team, and that goes with the Browns too. Browns are either all in or all out catastrophe, so it didn't really seem like a season that should be as good as it was. And even with the Bengals, I mean, Joe Burrow's coming off a terrible, gruesome injury last year, and he looked like he hasn't skipped a beat either. So I think my biggest surprise so far is the AFC North being exactly what everyone thought it would be in the absolute battleground it's been so far. I mean, you can't predict who's going to win when these teams face each other.
You really can't. And like, in terms of that division, Alec, a lot of people were saying at the beginning of the year, it's either going to be Cincinnati or Pittsburgh in last place. And I didn't think, and Pittsburgh struggles, and like you were talking about, they should be better than what they are, but I never viewed them as a last place team. So like you're saying, I'm not surprised by the competitiveness of the division, but I'm just surprised of some of the responses of the teams.
I'm more just surprised that it's lived up to the exact hype everybody thought it was going to be of, oh man, everyone's fighting for first place halfway through the season. I think we're going to come down the stretch here, and what's really going to come into fruition is the head-to-head matchups between these teams that are probably going to finish things off, because you see these teams go out of division, and they're tearing house outside of the division. They come in and start beating each other up, and it's kind of once we say, Big Ten basketball come, college season, they play great out of conference, come into conference, beat the snot out of each other, and they kind of lose respect around the league. And AFC North, they're kind of in a similar slight. They go out and kick everybody else's butt, and they come back here into the conference or into the division, and all of a sudden you go, why is this what we're seeing here? We got, Bengals destroying the Ravens one week, then the Browns destroy the Bengals the next week, but then the Browns are losing to the Steelers and they look terrible and all of this and that, and then you get the Steelers looking like, oh my god, they suck, and then they beat the Browns and they look dominating defensively. It's like there's no consistency in the North when they start playing each other, but out of the division, you see these are probably potentially four of the best teams in football. And then they play each other, and they look completely different.
I was talking a little before the show. There's the potential that 3 playoff teams come out of the AFC North, but they're going to have that extra playoff spot this year, right?
They had that last year too, though, Matt.
Yeah, they had that last year too. There's a potential of 3 of them. Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland or Cincinnati. It could go.
You could throw any combination of any of those 4 teams. Yeah. Honestly, just like you could throw in any combination of the whole AFC.
If you look at every other division, I mean, everybody's counting the Bills out. Counting the Bills in for that. For AFC East, but New England's sneaking around still. And then AFC South. I mean, you have Tennessee. That's gonna be it. I mean, the Colts are under 500. Yeah, they could make a late run. And then the AFC West, yes, they're a little stacked too. Chargers and of course the Raiders there. But I mean, Kansas City hasn't been playing the same either, and of course Denver. So
I'll tell you what though, Matt. What you brought up the AFC West, I could be wrong, and I'm not saying they're going to win the division, but I'm still not giving up on the Kansas City Chiefs yet, despite how I said how bad their defense is. They found a way to overcome it the last few years, and their offense is still pretty lethal. And the late in the year, if they get sneaking the playoffs, I don't want to play them.
Right.
No.
All right, guys, why don't we move on here quickly. Mike, your team was held scoreless until the 4th quarter last night against the Denver Broncos, who are now 5-4 and look like they're back on a hightail once again. They win this one 30-16. Any thoughts from your team coming out of this game last night?
I mean, obviously they didn't play well. We all know that, and they just didn't seem ready to play. I saw the highlights. I was texting during the game. I didn't have it on TV, but I look at it this, and I've been telling my dad because he's a Cowboy fan as well, and some other people that I know that are Cowboy fans. As great as they are, I'm still not sold with their head coach yet. I think Mike McCarthy is, and I'm not asking for him to be fired or anything. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying in a game like that, when you're at home, you're coming off a 6-game winning streak. You haven't lost since week 1. You're coming home to play a team that's average and a team that you're clearly better than, and you lay an egg. And it's like I look at it's pretty not pathetic because you have to have a leader on your team, like player wise. But outside of Dak Prescott, that is their obvious leader. What leadership did they get from coaching staff? I don't see. I mean, Mike McCarthy. I think he's a decent coach, but it's like do I trust him late in the games with clock management because he nearly blew a couple games this year, even though they won, but he came close to blowing them with his clock management, and it's just I don't think this is going to continue. Next week, if this happens again against the Falcons at home, then I'll be worried. But they need. I don't like to lose games, Matt, but it's like maybe they didn't need to lose a game like this to a team that they're clearly better than, but they need to come into a game thinking, hey, we can't just beat everybody.
Reality check.
Even though reality check. I'm not into lose. I'm not making excuses for losses. They got beat yesterday, and they deserve to lose. But maybe you do need a reality check sometimes. They haven't lost. Their other loss was a 2-point loss against the defending champs on week 1. So they had to have some type of wake-up
need to panic. Every team's going to lose in the NFL. You don't have to go undefeated to win a Super Bowl. And last night, sometimes you just don't show up some weeks. And I think with the return of Dak as well, coming off his injury, I think it was a step slow for them to get back into it. And the defense, they just got trumped over immediately. I mean, they got outscored 16-0 in that first half, and from there it kind of felt like all the life left Dallas. They didn't really have anything going on, and Zeke couldn't get it going. They hardly ran with Pollard. They hardly ran with Zeke altogether. I mean, he got 5.1 yards per carry, but they ran him 10 times, and when you're bringing back a quarterback and you throw him 40 times, and this is a game you felt like, hey, maybe we should probably run the football against the Denver team that has no rush defense, especially with the loss of, Von Miller, who they sent out to L.A., They should have had no problems running the football. Instead, they run it 14 times with 2 of the top backs in the league. I think that's probably the biggest look you see right now at the Cowboys. And defensively, they have 3 guys I think you can look at every week. And obviously, it's Jerron Diggs. He's having a great season. Micah Parsons, an absolute gem. 2.5 sacks in this game. And Leighton Vander Esch. He's been a solid leader. If he stays healthy, it's going to help this defense. But I think your defense needs to find life early on in these games. Create turnovers, create 3-and-outs, get teams off quickly. This is not a team in the Broncos that should be putting up 30 points against a defense like this with, their backs combining for nearly 200 yards and a touchdown on the ground. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater hardly was looking at anything. He got Jerry Jeudy back, and Jerry Jeudy goes off 6 receptions, 69 yards in this game. And then Tim Patrick, they got their big tight end involved, and he gets 85 yards and a touchdown. And this Broncos squad, they looked good, but they shouldn't against this Cowboys defense with the way we've seen this team playing throughout the rest of the season. And any final thoughts here before we move on to one or two final games?
But I could even say their defense needed a wake-up call too as well, because even in that Tampa Bay game, they gave 31 points, I think it was, but they showed improvements in that game. I mean, it's still against Tom Brady. He shreds any defense, but it's like maybe they needed a wake-up call as well, because I was starting to feel better about their defense, and it's still a work in progress and take baby steps with them. I've had that approach all year, because for how bad they were last year, and they're still making. I said when you were speaking, they're still missing DeMarcus Lawrence, so that's going to shore up that side of the ball when he's healthy. But I mean, it just happens every once in a while. You get beat. They just when you're down 16-0 against the Broncos. I know they just traded Von Miller, but their defense is still pretty average. It's still up there in the upper half of the league. So yeah, you're down 16-0. It's hard to come back against them.
It needs some work. I don't think they should rely on their defense too much, and that's where the offense comes in. And, I mean, I want to talk about Dak for a second here. First of all, he could have played last week. He was eligible to play, and they didn't play him. So he was out the past 2 weeks because they had a bye week before that. So you sit your star quarterback for 2 weeks and then throw him into the game. It's not going to be easy to come out and, throw 400-plus yards like he's been doing pretty much the whole season. I mean, the last game he played in was against New England, and he threw for over 400 yards. But then you get the bye week, and then, he was injured. So he had all that time off, and you throw him in there. I say he was eligible last week. He should have got him going again last week. And that's where I agree with you with the coaching decisions with McCarthy. I say he was available to play. He should have played him.
Well, yeah, I agree with you, too. He should have played. And looking through the warm-ups and the routine he went through before the game, he looked like he should have played. But it's Dak, though. He had that. Yeah. I know it was a different type of injury last year, but he seems injury-prone, especially going back to last year. And those calf injuries, Matt, I agree he should have played, but give him another week off because it's like calf injuries we've seen it in the NBA with guys like Kevin Love. He was out 2 months last year with a calf strain. It's just different with every guy.
I mean, you see Kawhi Leonard, he's out every other month with one, calf strain, knee injury. But we do have to move on here. 2 final games. Are you guys surprised with the way the Titans were able to win their football game despite not having Derrick Henry? I mean, I think we all kind of counted the Titans out a little bit after the loss there. I mean, Tannehill didn't play great, but they just did just enough. Any surprises there? Why don't you give a quick analysis?
I was pretty surprised with their defense played.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense is pretty strong. It's one of the better ones. But
Dupree...
I mean, look what they did to Matt Stafford. They made this in that spurt where he threw that should have been a safety. I mean, that's the thing. I would just take the 2 points to take the safety instead of giving up 7 points. But that's just me. And then the very next possession, he throws a pick 6. So I'm in that spurt right there, and throughout points of the game, I'm pretty surprised with the way their defense played.
What about you, Matt? Quick thought.
Yeah, I'd say it was a little bit of a reality check for the Rams.
All right, here. Then one final game we'll go to. Then we'll cut out this show here. Send it to Power Hour next on YSN. Browns-Bengals. Browns were phenomenal in last night's game, and coming off the controversy, every time you hear people start talking bad about Baker Mayfield, he has his best games, and this was no different there. He puts up 14 and 21, 218 yards, 2 touchdowns. You expected this, coming off the stuff that happened last week. Peoples-Jones gets the massive 60-yard touchdown. Denzel Ward gets a 98-yard pick 6. He looked great defensively as well, and they were picking apart Joe Burrow, and this was the same problem we saw from the Bengals last year. They couldn't protect Joe once again, and they faced a pass rush that hasn't been great this year, but they played phenomenal against this Bengals front line, and I think if that tells you anything, it's that the Bengals didn't get enough this past offseason, much like we kind of thought they weren't going to, and they didn't. Nick Chubb on the ground looks like he's going to end up taking the rushing title with the loss of Derrick Henry on the season. He got 9.8 yards per carry in this one, 137 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, back to form here, coming off the injuries. He also gets 26 yards in the air. I think the one problem you see coming off the Browns this past week is they didn't have one guy besides Donovan Peoples really cement himself with any big plays. A lot of small ones, but with the way Chubb was playing on the ground, they weren't really going to the air. Just 21 passes for Baker, and everyone wants to throw out Baker Mayfield's passing stats on the season and how they look awful. He's got terrible QBR, high in interceptions. It's just the way this offense is designed. It's not a pass-heavy team. I think we've seen that, and now that Chubb is back, I mean, he gets 14 carries. Baker had 14 completions. So it is clearly an offense designed to run the football, and they're going to continue doing that. And if the defense plays like they did here against the Bengals, this is the Browns team everyone expected them to be at the beginning of the year. So I'm looking to see them continue that. And, they had balance on offense, and they were trying new things. And I loved what I was seeing out of the team without OBJ. Because I've been saying this the last year and a half, 2 years, that I just didn't ever like these two playing together, and you kind of felt there was no chemistry. And I think I said that before he was released last week, that it just didn't feel like there was anything between these two. And you see him gone, and still Jarvis Landry's trying to find his way back into the offense, and he hasn't been getting much going either. But there's so many guys talented on this offense that they have so much other to go to. And Anthony Walker Jr. on defense had 12 tackles and a sack in this game. The safety, Troy Hill, I believe set the record for most sacks for Browns defensive back in history with 2 in that game. And you obviously get the interception from John Johnson, the pick 6 from Denzel Ward. Then there was another one that got taken away by a ticky-tack call. So he was a slight chance early, but, it's one that probably could have gone either way, and depending on the team playing, probably could have, but, it is what it is. Browns still win it, so I'm not looking back at it too bad, and I think there's some odd play calling down in the red zone for the Browns, but nothing too serious here. Any thoughts for you guys before we wrap up here? You got to go quick. Sorry it took so long.
Not too much. Good play by the Browns.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, the Bengals show that they're still young, and they're still work in progress.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to do it here. Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec. That's Matt. That's Mike. We'll see you all tomorrow here on the Casual Sports Podcast.
Hurry up and give Beast of the Week.
Yeah, go ahead. Go for it.
All right, beast of the week is Ricky Rubio, 37 points off the bench. That says it. That's the beast
All
of
right.
the week.
There you go. Well, that's Casual Sports Podcast Power Hour. Up next. Peace out.
DJ.
Matt and Ricky hit his first 8 threes in a row, too.
Yeah, I know. That's insane. That's insane. What is hanging around here? Oh.
Nice shirt, Matt.
Yeah, I know. I pulled it out of the closet. Miracle Ritual shirt.
You should have had a Cavs shirt and a Steeler hat or something.
Nah,
Cavs are playing good. You got Steelers going.
I'll wear Steelers tomorrow. Should be going out soon. I'm so surprised. Ugh. Well, I'll just say it after.
What are you saying?
What is way? I'll just say it after we get cut out.
Oh, hey, Raiders also released Damon Arnett this week.
Yeah. So
Forgot
they
about that.
released back-to-back first-round picks.
Wasn't he having trouble, too? Like, off the field stuff?
Yeah.
I don't know if I sent it in the group or somebody did, but I saw it somewhere.
I saw it. Watch them win the